So this evening, we are focusing on the wisdom teachings, mostly from the frame that suffering is a catalyst to wisdom. But also, as just a reminder, always it's important to know the teachings as a frame of reference. So we'll start by reviewing some of the basic wisdom teachings that are on your handout. And we won't look at this one, we'll look at this side, not the side with the circles. So I'll review these before moving on to new material that will be new for almost everybody. I want to remind everybody that this path we're on, the Dharma path, has 3 prongs. Anybody remember what those 3, you can raise your hand. Anybody remember the 3 prongs? Yeah. So they are ethics, which Katie just spoke about, guidelines for wholesome behavior, meant to be seeds of inquiry, not commandments. Focus is always on non-harming. And the second prong is mental discipline, so the actual practice. What usually comes to mind when we think of mindfulness, and we'll be doing a lot of that here. And then finally, the third prong is wisdom. And there's a lot of wisdom to glean on the Dharma path, both to learn about from within and to find from without. So in looking at the handout, we'll look at the Four Noble Truths first. So a review for many of you. The earliest wisdom teaching that we learn is the Four Noble Truths. And it's connected Eightfold Path, 3 poisons, and the 3 marks of existence. So this is meant to be just a review. So I encourage you to let them be seeds of reflection rather than something to memorize this weekend or to master, right? It's just a quick review so we have sort of a frame from what we're all coming from. And especially if you're new, don't wrap yourself in knots over this. Let it percolate, and your insight into these truths will evolve over time. That's inevitable. So the Four Noble Truths, one of the most basic teachings in Buddhism, refers to one, that life is unsatisfactory. The word dukkha in Pali, best translation is unsatisfactoriness. Sometimes we use the phrase suffering or pain as well, but the closest translation is really that, we're not going to get everything we want in life. It's a difficult journey. There will be pain. A second noble truth is that the cause of some kinds of suffering, not all of them, some kinds of suffering, is caused by clinging. And some of you may remember from the spring that I used a different teaching with the word searches instead of clinging. The things that we're longing for, the things that we're searching for, that's the source of suffering. Those things that we're searching for. And then the third noble truth is that there's a way out. And the fourth noble truth is the way out, the path out. And that's the Eightfold Path. And so many of you are really familiar with these. So we're not addressing the Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths anywhere else on this retreat. But it's an underlying practice, underlying everything that we do. The second noble truth. Suffering is caused by clinging. And the second wisdom teaching I want to review is the 3 poisons, and we will talk about this later on in the retreat. So 3 poisons, I know it sounds really dramatic if you're new, but we had, back in 2,600 years ago, there was drama in the language. So 3 poisons are causes of suffering. First one being greed. And we're not talking about money necessarily. That's a poison for sure. But we're really referring to those searches, the craving, clinging, wanting. When we're seeking after things to be a certain way and they're not, we're not going to be 100% content, and so we're going to be suffering. We also use the phrase attachment in kind of a substitute to greed and craving. So you'll hear these words interchangeably: greed, clinging, craving, attachment, anything that feels like this, right? And then the second poison is hatred. And hate is a really strong word. That is what my mother told me when I was young. This is referring to resistance, aversion, and not wanting, really kind of being against what's happening right now. When we're, trying to push away something that's happening, we suffer, right? And the third poison is delusion, and we're not necessarily talking about a mental health symptom of being delusional, but maybe. Delusion really refers to being ignorant of the source of suffering, or actually forgetting what we once knew. That suffering is caused by clinging, right? And it's that simple. It's really that simple, and we forget it all the time. At least I do. Anybody else forget that suffering is caused by clinging? I don't know. I've been practicing 20 years, and I can be like totally mindful and aware of all my clings, all of them, all my clings in one moment. And because of that, I'm able to meet all of life's joys and sorrows without resentment, without friction. But the next minute, I totally forget why I'm suffering. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Where's the wisdom? Like, I need some wisdom. So greed, hatred, and delusion, or craving, aversion, and ignorance. 3 poisons. And the next wisdom teaching, and this is the final kind of review, is the 3 marks of existence. And these are a little more complicated, so bear with me. Suffering opens a door to these also, because just by meeting your suffering squarely, face to face, you can't help but become more deeply attuned to these 3 marks. And they're fundamental, immutable facts of the universe. They're natural laws like gravity or the weather that we can't escape, although we might try because we're not fond of them. We're not fond of these at all. We don't make gravity a problem because it doesn't make sense that an apple would fall up and not down. We're used to those things. But these we're not quite so attuned with. So the first one is dukkha, which we already went over, unsatisfactoriness or suffering. So life is inherently challenging at times, even downright miserable. And we just don't like that fact. We resist it and we hate it, essentially. But when we work with suffering and we work with it mindfully, we actually really get that. The door to this profound insight is opened, and we drop out of resisting that we can't avoid many kinds of suffering, though we might try. We just can't escape it. It's a part of life. And when we come to live in harmony with this fact, we suffer less, right? We resist less. The second mark is anicca, impermanence. Everything is always changing, from the cellular level to the birth and death of stars and galaxies, maybe universes. And we all understand this on one level. We sort of know this. But in many cases, when it impacts us, we're not a fan of change. But when we embrace suffering mindfully, the way we've been talking about, that suffering itself reveals that everything changes. So your experience of suffering, and that's why we investigate it and we stay with it, you realize that it comes and goes. It never stays the same. So just by studying it mindfully, our suffering, we see the truth of change. And it becomes easier for us to live in harmony with impermanence rather than fighting it. And when we live in harmony with impermanence, we no longer cling to anything because it will go away anyway. When we don't cling, we don't suffer. Clinging becomes a waste of time and energy. We're much less interested in it. And then the third mark is anatta, or not self. Simplest way to describe it is to consider when we meet our suffering mindfully, we come to see that the suffering, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, is not self. It's not me. It's not even mine. Not self, right? They're just processes unfolding from causes and conditions. When we study our thoughts and emotions carefully, we really, really get that. Wow, these aren't me. They're not self. Not no self. In Buddhism, sometimes people think that no self is a thing. In Buddhism, it's not. It's not self. And this idea that what I'm experiencing is not me is so profoundly freeing. So we see that suffering helps us to live in harmony with these three truths, dukkha, anicca, and anatta. And that is not easy to do. And when we live in harmony with these three marks, the three poisons that I went over just before that are neutralized. So we can neutralize the poisons by living in harmony with the marks, kind of like anti-venom. Okay, so that's the end of that review. Hopefully it wasn't too awful. There's a reason for it. You'll see as the weekend progresses. So the Four Noble Truths, the three poisons, and the three marks of existence.